have 5 minutes to live. 5 minutes to live.
to the Oscoda Township regular board meeting for August 12th, 2019. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Cummings, absent. Ms. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Gieske.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Nordine here. Mr. Byer.
Here.
Mr. Weed.
Here. Agenda additions. I have one item to add under other, number 3.
Under project updates, I'd like to add number 9 for the old.
You got a title, don't you, for yours? Do you give the
I
title?
was making sure that
Oh.
Mr. Byer was ready to write this. It's
I
for
am
the
ready.
Freedom Fest 2020.
And then for project updates, a number 9 for old, an update on the old township dump. And then I would also like to be able to, based on the approval of the fire chief's recommendations last board meeting on the 22nd, there was approval of adding 5 more firefighters to the Oscoda Township Volunteer Fire Department, and we have 4 of the firefighters here tonight. I'd just like to ask them to come to the podium and state their name so all of the board members can put a face to the name of the firefighters approved. There is only one absent firefighter. Unfortunately, I believe he's deployed. So if they could just step up and state their name to introduce yourself to the board.
Good evening, Kyle Malashevsky.
Tim Justice. Adam Travis.
Fire Chief McGregor, due to emergency, couldn't be here tonight. But he's very happy that we got such an excellent pool of candidates to pull from when we posted for the firefighter positions. And per the board's request, we wanted to be able to come put a face to the name so you know who they are. And if you want to drop in on a Thursday night and talk more with them, they are there on Thursday nights at 6:15 in the fire barn.
Thank you very much for helping serve our community.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We kind of thought you were undercover policemen or something. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.
All right, any other agenda additions or changes? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move that we approve the agenda with the changes.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Gieske. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda's set. Now we're at our public comment period. For this first one, there's a card that needs to be filled out and then submitted to the superintendent. There's a 4-minute time limit, and when you come to the podium, please introduce yourself. What's our first card?
All right, we have Greg Cole concerning Phase 1 water main line.
Greg Cole, 4507 Vanette Dam Road. I'm just here to report that the Rao Engineering and John Henry Excavating Company has been doing a fine job. Communication-wise, any questions that we've had down there, they've come right out and explained things, and it's going real good. Next step is they tested the water through the pipes, and then they're going to move on to lining the plumbing up. So, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Arnie LaRich about the Economic Development Committee.
Ani Larich, Oscoda, Westwood Drive. I'd like to applaud the township and also especially our superintendent, Dave, for organizing over the last year a concerted effort to engage the community as a whole and to bring some science and background to decisions. The Economic Improvement Committee is just one example of that, and tomorrow night I look forward to that open session. This Economic Improvement Committee, as I read through it, from what I could find, that was in the package, is taking on a big charge. Increasing economic base, encouraging new business growth, promoting retention of current businesses in the township. This also has 6 significant tasks to accomplish: economic development strategy, employ a downtown redevelopment plan, develop and apply a community marketing and branding system to be discussed tomorrow evening, retain redevelopment ready communities certification, oversee brownfield redevelopment authority activities, and encourage investment in the township's opportunity zone. Those are very diverse programs, number one, and very important, and otherwise you wouldn't have added it to this committee. My point is this. Right now, the plan is to have a committee of 5 board members. 3 of them are named, how they'll be chosen, and 2 of them are vacant, open to any Oscoda Township resident. I would ask that the board think seriously about adding 2 more dedicated positions to cover and to be capable of achieving those goals that I rattled off earlier in your plan. And those 2 positions would be 1, business and industry based commissioner to handle that topic. And the second would be community services and needs. And that those be dedicated positions for those topics. If you talk to any realtor, when someone is coming in, whether it be a business or an individual, especially as a business coming in, they'll definitely look at, can they conduct their business? Is there infrastructure? The beans and bullets of bringing a company and operating it in a township. But the other thing they look at next is schools. And we're fortunate we have a very positive answer to that. But the next thing, very closely following that, is what's the quality of life in the community? Because typically there's only one worker that they're targeting in their business. But the rest of the family is going to be living their lives in the community. So therefore, I really want you to look and ask you to look at community service and needs as a commissioner position and engage on nonprofits to help your director that you're going to be paying $100,000 for. And that's worth it, but give them a board that's fully capable to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Mark Miller about the Michigan Rail Conference.
I've got a couple items. Mark Miller, 8034 First Street. The annual Michigan Rail Conference was in East Lansing last week. The relevant factors for us is Lake State Railway, which runs from Saginaw to Alpena and up to Gaylord, are upgrading their rails, so faster trains. Unfortunately, those rails will not be passenger rated for our side of the state, while the Gaylord rails are. The other items, see, Arnie talked about the Economic and Development Committee. I looked at two successful groups, Bay Future and Grayling Main Street, and based on their makeup, came up with some additional positions, more than you, but you're free to right-size it to your group. I don't know if anybody realizes, but we have the retired treasurer of Dow here in Oscoda, and you may want to reach out to him. Also, this is the only copy I have. That's a major article on Bay Future. Those two individuals, Mark Litton and Trevor Keys, created, I want to say, about 200 jobs for Bay County. And that's something, actually, we're not going to create that many, but we can right-size it. And in advertising for this position, you may want to talk to Jeff Johnson, the former commissioner. He looked at it for the commissioners a couple years ago, and also advertise on LinkedIn. What else? There's these council things tomorrow night and Wednesday, October 28th on the Municipal Service Center. I ask that you have some sort of survey available online for those who cannot attend. The problems with our audit, that we can't clear them. I went out and pulled together 4 firms from Alpena to Saginaw. Since I'm an ex-Price Waterhouse guy, I need to disclose that I know the people from BSRW. What they would bring to the table is she's actually worked as a controller and driven a desk. So she can tell you which controls will work and which will not. Coming from a CPA firm, they're a little bit esoteric. And what else? Thank you for the community responders last month. I'd like to know when the next bike path meeting is. Curious about this 200K model home. And, we also have European and Japanese companies in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you can hang on, please, when they're done. Go ahead with the next card.
We got Don Barber, 317 South State Street, about putting buildings on Paul Bunyan Field.
I'm here to talk about the thing that they're thinking about putting government buildings on Paul Bunyan Field, and I've already got over 3,000 signatures. I figured by the 28th, when the next meeting comes, that we'll have even 5,000 by then, maybe more. It just kind of took off. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants you to take the park and turn it into government buildings when there's so much other property out there that you could do something with. In fact, I was just going by, and the other thing was too is that my petition had a word historic in it, and I was told that it wasn't historic. I just went by the field, and there's a plaque on the front of the field that says that this is the historical Paul Bunyan Festival, where they have the Paul Bunyan festivals there, and it said historical on it. So I'm confused about that, because if the festival is historic on the Paul Bunyan Field, then I don't know why the word historical can't be used in my petition. I want to thank the community. They have been, I'm so proud of them right now. This has been overwhelming, the response that I've gotten from the community about this, because no one wants this done on that park. They want you to, I've asked Jamie for the poster that was up at one time in the lobby. I had gone through quite a few times and had noticed a nice poster of what the park, they wanted to do with the park, and I'm sure that there was money spent on that to do all that. So here again is more money spent that's going to be wasted because you're trying not to do what that poster was all about. We want it. We want our park. It should be just a nice little park that could be for the families and the community, just like it was left to the schools as a legacy for the schools. And I realized once it went from the schools to the township that, they could do anything they want with it. Well, not when it comes to the community, and 75% of the community doesn't want it. And I will go that far as to say that, because they don't. This is something that, all the years I've been here, this is the one passion I've had, is that park, and I always thought that something nice could be done with it. And now I'm finally saying it, and I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to tell everybody, please come to the meeting on the 28th, as many people as can come, and let's let you all know that we don't want this to happen. So I thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
I don't know how I feel about the idea yet. So I'm not trying to talk you into anything, but I have a question.
No, that's okay. I've known you for a long time.
The people.
Can I hold off now? Were you done speaking on that part there?
Yes, I was done.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure so we didn't eat into your
Oh,
time.
no. I just wanted to thank the community. They've been wonderful. I'm proud of them. This is fabulous, so.
The people that signed your petition, are they against the idea of having a compact building somewhat like Tawas has in Newman Street?
Well, they're
or is
against,
it just the location?
It's the location.
I see.
More than anything. As far as a compact building, I think that's kind of, I hate to go even further than, I'm fighting for the park at this point.
Sure.
But to have a compact building, I'm like, where's the money coming from, for one thing? The other thing is that I think we have a more important issue on our hands right now, and that is the water problem. I think that needs to be dealt with before anything of huge proportion starts,
Right.
But no, it's the location as far as that part right now, I was just looking, that part by the gravel company, or where they have the cement products, I forget the name of it.
It was the old Lookin' Sons.
The sand, the part where they have all I've lost that one. But anyway, there's areas out there to put it.
Thank
I
you
want to
very
thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
That's all we got.
All right. The floor is now closed to public comment. We're now into the consent agenda. Is any questions regarding the minutes for July 19th and July 22nd? Any comments for the payment of bills for $123,015.34? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Gieske.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Subcommittee reports and project updates. First, results of the special election.
All right, so last Tuesday, the 6th of August, there were two issues on the ballot. The first being the ballot proposal about the fire, and that passed 57 to 42%. And as far as the proposal, other ballot proposal for the road millage, that did not, that was not successful, and that was about 44 to 56%. So fire is still the same 0.9. As far as the roads, We have a road and sidewalk committee meeting coming up in a couple weeks, and we will figure out what the next option is for the road and sidewalk committee associated with addressing the roads.
The update on the water main extension?
All right, so Mr. Cole gave an update that they have been working out there on Van Etten Dam Road. As far as the water line, the main, they are working to lower that and dewater, and then hope to start hooking residents up. By the next meeting for August 26th, the contract with John Henry was to be able to provide partial payments for work completed every 30 days. And so that was agreed to the 22nd at that board meeting. So you will see a partial payment for the work performed. There's going to be 2 invoices. So work performed to fix the previous contractor's work, and then there will be separate for the actual water line, the plumbing that goes into the house and connecting those folks to the water main. And so those hookups, the base bid on an average 100-foot extension was going to be approximately $4,400. And so based on that work performed, Roe will be detailing that, and you will be seeing the payments requested from John Henry associated with that at the end of the month.
The utility ordinance work session?
We had a very lengthy and productive work session for the utilities ordinances. So that include both the water and the sewer ordinances last Friday the 9th at 10 a.m. here at the library. A lot of feedback was provided by both F&V and the board. So that was productive, and I thought we made a lot of progress on that. Those changes will be incorporated. Based on the changes that were going to be incorporated, we do have to have our updated sewer ordinance submitted and reviewed by Eagle. And so Mr. Freeman from Rowe will be doing that and submitting at least for a review by Eagle as far as the sewer ordinance. Number 4 on there has to do with the community branding event. Mr. Lurich already touched on this. This is tomorrow, Tuesday, the 13th at the Warrior Pavilion. This is a public engagement session from 6 to 7:30. We have both Joe Borgstrom from Place and Main Advisors and Ben Muldrow from Arnett Muldrow, though they're both in the community. Spent some time with them this afternoon with some targeted customer focus groups. We had a whole lineup tomorrow of more targeted customer focus groups, and then that will be from 6 to 7:30 tomorrow night at the Warrior Pavilion when we engage as far as the community branding event. We have on Wednesday another 2020 budget work session number 3, and I sent out an email last Friday associated with some of the supporting documentation on there. I'm very happy to report that been able to kind of give at least preliminary figures associated with the ensemble cost share for police and fire and cemetery. I wasn't able to produce that till about November of last year. So it's a good feeling being able to get out in front of that, and so you have at least an understanding of how that is going to look for 2020. I did have an extensive conversation with the Oscoda Township Superintendent about how to address some of the issues associated with the cemetery and the chargebacks and the cost share and the revenue sharing associated with openings and closings of the grave. So we will have an extensive conversation about that, as well as the further conversation about the inclusion of the proposed inclusion of an economic improvement director into the 2020 appropriations and how that would work. So that is scheduled for this Wednesday at 1:30 here at the library. As Ms. Barber mentioned before about the Township Board work session scheduled for Wednesday, the 28th, and that's with Wigan Ticknell and Associates. So they are the architects out of Saginaw, and Rowe Professional Services Company at the Warrior Pavilion at 6 p.m., and that is to go over the preliminary concept of a consolidated municipal services center. So that'll be from 6 to about 7:30. on Wednesday, the 28th, and the public is encouraged to come and understand what that preliminary concept means. As far as the update on the IET Phase 3, the next bike path meeting will be 4:30 here on Thursday, the 15th, and that will be with Roe as well as the IET committee. They've already gotten feedback on the preliminary design of the the design engineering for Phase 3 of the bike path. There have been 51 letters mailed out associated with the affected residents within the Foot Site Village portion. So that will be Thursday, the 15th at 4:30 here in the library in this room.
Right. Also, we have an IET meeting at 2 o'clock on the same day. That's our normal meeting for the month.
And
That's at the Oscoda Township Hall.
at 2 o'clock on the 15th. We've had several updates on the Economic Improvement Committee, and they've been working to craft the Economic Improvement Director position. You see a lot of the information associated with that in the packet. Wanted to introduce that as a concept and be able to provide that to the board and, have any feedback. Or again, we're going to touch on this and the proposed incorporation of that into the 2020 appropriations on Wednesday at the third 2020 budget work session, and then try to hammer out any of the details to be able to come back to the board with a proposal on the 26th. So if you look at the timeline, the deliverables, as far as everything that Arnie mentioned for the strategies that are going to be coming from Place Leap, the implementation of those strategies, that's going to be the driving force. And again, that aligns with the Resolution 2019-20 as far as the creation of the Economic Improvement Committee. So there's a lot of information. We'll be able to talk about that this Wednesday, the 14th.
So for the old Oscoda Township dump, we had a meeting last week with Eagle, and they so that we can plan a course forward on how to handle this. They gave us information in the form to fill out so that we can seek financial assistance from the DEQ to pay for having permanent wells installed. The ones they installed before were just temporary wells. So we will get permanent wells installed, hopefully funded by DEQ, and then there will be a plan enacted on going beyond the boundaries of the property to install a few more wells so that we can see the extent of the plume. Everything shows right now it doesn't go into surface water, it doesn't reach any wells. Out of the testing they've done, no one is personally impacted by this. But now we're going to run through the analysis, how much or how far that plume goes. Once we determine that, then a plan can be worked on how that gets either contained or remediated.
And you're talking about the former dump from years ago that's on Kings Corner Road?
Correct.
Okay, between F41 and Windy Hill?
Yes.
Windy Hill being the...
Between Loud Drive and Cedar Lake.
Yeah.
So.
No, the permanent wells, they would be installed by Eagle?
We don't know who will install them. It depends on if they can financially assist us. Otherwise, it'll be us hiring a contractor to do that. So, but they understand our unique situation here. It's not like other communities. Even though the results in our dump are about the same as most other dumps that they've tested, they understand that we have this federal issue to contend with, and so they know that we do have a financial need.
Yeah, it kind of came up the last meeting with the gentleman that spoke and trying to blend in or overlap the two causes of problems.
Yes, and the DEQ said that all data points to that dump does not reach into any surface water. All right, anybody have anything else?
I have a question here. The Economic Improvement Committee, Martin, you are on that committee, right? You represent this board, is that true? Yeah. Who else is on it's a 5-person committee?
So,
Who are the other 4?
so Mr. Mark Weingant
Okay,
from STS,
yes.
he's the chair. You have Rosemary Netwing,
Rosemary, okay,
Rhonda Cope,
okay.
who also represents the Planning Commission.
Uh-huh.
And then you have Dave Eiler.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, on to the superintendent report, Northern Assessing Contract.
Right. So, your packet contains a copy of the Township Professional Services Contract Agreement with Northern Assessing Consultants and Services. The term of this agreement is for 2 years, 1/1 of 2018 through 12/31 of 2019. There's also the option of a 2-year extension. And in there, you will see the last page, there's a memo from Nancy dated 10/2/2017. And they're basically, that is detailing the costs through 2021. So the 2-year option to extend that would be for 2020 and 2021, and the costs associated are detailed on there. The last time the board wished to solicit bids was the fall of 2013, and when the board last considered the question, proposals were sought, and only one response was was received, and that being from the Northern Assessing Consultants and Services. So, wanted to be able to lay the options out there for the Northern Assessing, for the assessing services, and wanted to be able to discuss that with the board tonight on how to move forward.
Comments?
Well, I'd just like to point out that in late 2018, the Public Act 660 was passed, which deals with assessing requirements, and a number of things were put in place to make sure that assessing in the state was being done properly. They have what's called a AMAR, Audit of Minimum Assessing Requirements, which we are fortunate to have an assessor company that meets the requirements, and we are in pretty good shape as far as our assessing is concerned. It should be a concern to the board, because under this law, this board is ultimately responsible for the assessing, not the assessor. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of a township board. I think what's happened in the past is there were small townships where actually it was the supervisor who actually did the assessing, and their qualifications weren't based on any qualifications, just years and years of doing it. So the state wants to make sure that every area in the state of Michigan is being assessed fairly, and hence the new Public Act 660, which was passed in December of 2018. So I think we're fortunate to have the assessor that we have, and I think they do a fantastic job for us.
Is there a grandfather provision to this bill? Like, for instance, I think Greenbush Township, the supervisor is the assessor. Will that person have to stop, or
If they can't make, if they can't make the audit.
okay?
I'd like to back up Bill's words there, because I sat on that board for many years, the assessment board, and does a fine job, as far as I'm concerned. Real fine job.
And they have the necessary certification to pass all the state's requirements.
To piggyback also, there is a shortage of assessors in the state of Michigan, as there is already. I would like to see us consider negotiating with the current provider.
Negotiate what?
Or agree to what they've presented with the less than 2.5 increase for the extension of the 2 years.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I follow.
Just go ahead and renew for the 2 years at the increase that's presented,
Okay.
instead of bidding out.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I'll support that.
Okay.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Aton Tree Service.
All right, so your packet contains a detail of the $3,000 amount due to Aton tree and debris. At the 624 Township Board meeting, it was approved for $2,950, and while they were down there, it was agreed that they needed to grind another stump for $50, and so that is why you see the $3,000 invoice instead of the $2,950, and the increase of $50 requires the Township Board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we go ahead with the Aton tree invoice with the $50 change.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Gasky.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Resolution 2019-21 pertaining to ordinance numbering.
All right. So, what you have in your packet is a proposal prepared by the clerk to be able to establish the ordinance numbering, and so that there, basically, it revises the ordinance number 1901 and establishes a new number, as well as for ordinance number 2019-263 associated with small wireless communication facilities.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 2019-21 regarding the ordinance numbering.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Gasky.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Resolution 2019-22, fees for 5G small cell wireless.
Okay, so the Township Board previously established and passed an ordinance associated with 5G small cell wireless facilities. That has to do with the how that is to be governed for the township. However, the fees are typically done separately as a resolution to the board, and so that is what 2019-22 details are, the fees associated with 5G small cell wireless.
Comments?
You have in front of you a revised added to line based on our work session. The comment was to be able to present to the board language associated that says every 5 years after the effective date of the act, the maximum fees shall be increased by 10% and rounded to the nearest dollar. So it was asked that it be updated to reference the section of the ordinance associated with the small G, the 5G small cell wireless ordinance, so that there is no misinterpretation between what the fees are.
The application fees, so they would go to the zoning office to get the application from Warna?
Correct.
And then on an annual basis, we would have to bill them.
Correct. So the first bullet there is the one time, and then the modification of existing small cell. So the third bullet there, annual fees, is what you're talking about. The
Right.
third bullet, the 200 and the 300, depending if it is a different facility and a different pole.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, move to approve Resolution 2019-22 detailing the fee structure to coincide with the 5G small cell wireless ordinance. Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Gayaski. Roll call.
Mr. Gasky.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Resolution 2019-24, Truth in Taxation Public Hearing.
All right, so this is to, well, before we talk about 24, 23 was already spoken for. So you will be seeing 23, Resolution 2019-23, at the August 26th meeting. To continue the ordering associated with the resolution, 2019-24 is regarding the Truth in Taxation Public Hearing. So this resolution is to establish a public hearing for the next meeting on Monday, August 26th, 2019 at 7 p.m. And that public hearing is to restore its maximum allowable millage rate of 4.6908 mils for the general fund for 2020. So to be able to levy the maximum allowable millage by law.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You start.
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution number 2019-24.
I'll support it.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Gayaski. Roll call.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Gasky.
Yeah.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Ordinance 2013-256.
All right, so this is amending regulations for the possession and use of fireworks. So this was introduced and read at the Planning Commission's August 5th meeting and were unanimously approved to send and make the recommendation to the Township Board. What you will see in there, this is associated with the paper lanterns that go up in the air. They're referred to in here under Section 2, subsection E, sky lanterns, small hot air balloons made of paper with an opening at the bottom where a small fire is suspended. Those would not be allowed to be sold in the township.
Comments?
Is that what you want? They're not allowed to be sold? How
Or
about-
used, or used.
I was
Okay.
I was just gonna ask if that, wait a second,
Get them in Bay City.
No.
and bring them home.
See them
This
going
is-
towards the national forest, and it's bad news.
Yeah.
Isn't this a state regulation or state law? They can't be sold anywhere in the state of Michigan?
Nope, this is, so the ordinance number 2013-256 was recently modified associated with the updates to the state law. And then this goes above and beyond
The state law.
to say we don't want anything to do with the sky lanterns, can't sell them, can't use them in the township.
Who's
So,
going to enforce that? And how are we going to enforce it?
Mostly complaint driven, and associated, the police department would be writing tickets associated with that.
sort of along those lines, I'm supportive of the sky lantern concept being prohibited. I had questioned on Friday the impact about the revision of this ordinance on what's defined as novelty fireworks in our ordinance, like sparklers and cap guns. The way I read this is that it disqualifies use of those throughout the rest of the year, and I don't think that's needed, and I don't think that's really something that's going to be enforced, so I don't know why. I questioned putting it into the ordinance. So it prescribes only allowing the use of sparklers on those, 14 days or so throughout the year, and I just don't think that's what we're trying to do with the sky lanterns. I don't see the need to do that with lumping in the, sparklers and cap guns as well. Relatively inconsequential, but.
Any other comment? Go ahead.
Dave, do you have any idea if Osable's going to enact any legislation similar to this?
I am not aware of any legislation.
My experience has been that, and I'm not trying to pick a fight with Osable, but on many occasions I've watched fireworks from a site in Osable. There were a lot of these. Now, we pass an ordinance about no sky lanterns, and I'd say compared to Oscoda Township, Beach Park, or wherever, it's like 2/3 to 1/3. How can we have police enforce that in a different township? Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, I'm not going by what people said. I'm going what I have seen. That they're very popular south of us, the other side of the river. So,
Are you referring to specifically the sky lanterns?
yes, the paper sky lanterns. Yeah, and they usually always, the winds in the evening tend to go inland, so they go up in the air and they go west. I've never seen them, I can't remember seeing sky lanterns go out over Lake Huron and disappear.
So it's like any other difference we have between the two townships, and the police will be enforcing the rules that we put in place
In our township.
and
Yeah.
not enforcing the ones that Osable doesn't have.
Okay.
Can we write a letter to them encouraging them to do that same?
I can forward an executed copy of ordinance 2013-256 amended to the township superintendent.
Please.
I think we should table this until we hear from them.
The Osable?
Yeah. Because why should we pass it if they're gonna send stuff from across the township? We can't go over and give them a ticket. We both gotta be on board for this, because we both have the same police department. In my opinion. It's gonna be hard to enforce anyhow.
I think this gives us the ability to have an ordinance here in our township that our police department can enforce. What other townships do, even if they decide not to get on board, I still think this would be a valuable ordinance to have on the books for us to.
But this ties our hands. We can't go across the border or across the township line.
So, I
And I
mean,
like to go across the township line,
But
because we have the same police department.
But if they don't decide not to pass a similar ordinance, do we want to not have this ordinance here in Oscoda?
Well, then, write it.
Then we revisit
Then
it.
then we know what we're up against. But we don't know if we're up against anything, but no ordinance or or comment from Osable yet. We can always pass this, but I like to have both townships on board.
That would be a better scenario, for sure.
Right. We can always go back and pass it then. But I like to hear their comments on it.
Okay.
Any other comments?
So you want to table this?
Yeah. We'll make a motion, we table it until next meeting,
I
or
would
whenever we have a response from Osable.
I support that.
Motion by Mr. Gajewski and support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. On to other, for Cedar Lake Improvement Board, I was approached by someone on the Cedar Lake Improvement Board requesting if we could have an alternate assigned to that board. I know that you sit on that board, Mr. Byer. I didn't know if you had any thoughts regarding that.
No, that's fine. Being out of town quite a bit, I probably have missed, too many of the meetings, not all of them, but when the chairman, Rex Vaughn, is that the person you talked to?
I don't know.
Okay. I've given him my cell phone number numerous times and said, give me a call, and and I will do everything I can to be there. And I don't get any calls from him. So, but that's not a bad idea. We have alternates for other organizations. That's fine. The board is a 7-member board, Cedar Lake Improvement Board, and 2 of the 7 members live on Cedar Lake. Mr. Vaughn and myself. So I think I have a fairly good input on what's going on the lake and stuff. But if you want alternates, and I will bug him more to let me know when, because usually they'll set the meeting date for it. It's not a regular set like our meetings here. At a meeting at the final deal, well, when we're going to meet again, so it's a little bit changeable. So that's fine.
So then the question is, who would like to be the alternate?
Actually, Friday we discussed it at the pre-board meeting, and I was probably the first no right away. But after doing some thinking, I decided, since I do the taxes and collect the money for the special assessment, that maybe it would be helpful if I sat on that board.
All right.
So you're off the hook.
Is there any other discussion regarding this?
Don't all jump at once.
Anybody else want to volunteer?
I'll make a motion naming Jamie McGuire as our alternate to the Cedar Lake Improvement Board.
I'll support that.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. CVB Movies at the Pier.
All right, so you will see this from request from the CVB. And what they're asking to be able to do is have established makeup days if there's inclement weather associated with the Wednesday night. They understand that the Thursday night is already booked through the band shell with the Rotary concert series. So they're asking for a Friday night and then a special one on Saturday, August 31st is being the last movie if needed. What they're going to do next year, what I asked them to do is establish those backup dates in the initial request so there is no conflict associated with that band shell on Friday nights.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the makeup dates as requested.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Item number 3, Freedom Fest 2020.
All right, so this is an agenda addition. I emailed out and gave everybody a hard copy of the special event request. Freedom Fest, July 4th, 2020. What you'll see on there in bold is that in this request from Mr. Cruz, he's requesting no vehicles be allowed on the grass after 1 p.m. for the safety of attendees to the event. You'll see this is a very similar request to the 2019 Freedom Fest for July 4th, 2019. It's our understanding that the Parks and Rec Department has put together a proposal associated with at least preliminary plans to update the parks use policy. There's several different options associated, and that's slated to go to the Planning Commission Subcommittee at their next meeting is the 20th of August, when that would be considered. So, based on the ongoing updates to the parks use policy, the board could consider granting this request, understanding that there could potentially be updates to the policy that, Mr. Cruz attended the work session last Friday, the 9th, and seemed agreeable to be able to understand if there's any changes. He'd be able to consider those for the updated parks use policy.
Are there any comments from the board?
What? Yeah, I'm just, how did it work this July as far, in relation to the Lions Club and the Rotary? They have a food service that they perform there. Did that?
The problem was everybody settled in, and then the cars were there for them to be able to unload all of the food and the setup and the tables and everything like that. And so when they went to go to leave, that held up starting the bands.
And had to move the people that were already seated on the grass.
Okay.
Safety issue.
Is that the grass he's talking about?
Yes.
But
so,
not wanting to offend a couple of very valuable service clubs, they can still do their thing. They're willing to adapt to this.
we will be able to work with them to modify.
Yeah. Because I think what they perform down there as far as
They sell out of hot dogs every year.
hot
quick,
dogs
fast,
and
in a hurry.
pop and stuff like that, I don't want to wreck that
50 cents.
deal.
It's a deal.
Good.
Can you come up to the podium and we have some questions?
The last thing we're looking to do is to move the Rotary Club out. In the last 2 years, they've increased their hot dog sales up to 700 plus hot dogs in the last 2 years. So it's been a positive thing. People are hungry when they get there, and we don't want to lose that. We're just requesting that we block off 6 to 8 parking spots specifically for them, and then to help them get their food up to the area which they serve the food.
You didn't mention the Lions Club there in there with them.
Rotary
did.
and
Yeah,
Lions.
he did.
He just said the Rotary.
Yeah.
I know, I caught that.
And we don't want to lose that. I mean, the whole point about it is family value there, and the Rotary and the Lions Club both prevail in that direction.
So you're not, as part of your festival, you're not serving food and competing with them?
We have vendors there that sell food down by the parking area. And they start a little bit earlier, but what we see from the Rotary and Lions Club, everybody's waiting on them to show up. They're cheaper, they're less expensive, and the people eat. And then we have our food there for the evening rush, the late hours when people are drinking at the pier or drinking on the beach or anything. They have food available for them, though we serve no alcohol.
Well, I just had a couple of questions about the request.
Sure.
I'm totally in favor of this event. I think it's a great event. Bring a lot of people there, and it's a great opportunity. The one question I had, where it relates to offering food vending, is under Unit Ordinance 165, but if we were to grant this request, I want the understanding that the food vendors have to come and get the permits from the zoning office
Correct.
themselves.
Correct.
This wouldn't authorize you to bring in food trucks
Correct.
without them getting the,
Correct, and that was my agreement from Friday's meeting, that the only request I'm asking for right now is to allow me to get the contracts out to the bands, and that I got use of the band shell for the bands for next year. Any food vending, the Oscoda River Trading Post selling tubes or float items there, and anything will go with the new amended ordinance. I would review that and adapt to it.
and that was my other question, is there's nothing listed on here about selling, like, items
Right.
separate, so that
Right,
would,
and
that would
that's
come
being
on.
addressed, I think, in the new ordinance, correct?
Well, we have an ordinance for water sports at the beach park, and it does allow a vendor to sell items, water sports, T-shirts, goggles, all that kind of thing. But you would need to get a permit. You can get a one-day permit. It's a minimal amount,
Yeah, I get it.
but that would have to be done as well.
Yep.
The other question I had was, in terms of, we have a memorandum, and you probably have already talked with them about this, but we have a memorandum of understanding with the Chamber of Commerce as it relates to the band shell. And so, as long as there isn't a conflict with them, because you
Yep.
do have an
Rose has
understanding.
no conflicts. Rick doesn't have any conflicts with it. We've had 2 years of positive outcome. No fights, not having to call the police, anything. It's been great down there. Absolutely fabulous. And this year we're having country music. We got Alan Turner and the Stillhorse Band, which is a Nashville recording artist, and George Need, who's out of Detroit, which is a Detroit recording artist. And it's he plays Southern country rock along the lines of Kid Rock music, and Alan Turner, of course, is country music. And he travels the state of Michigan quite a bit, Traverse City, Alpena, so he's got a good following. And what we're trying to do again is attract those bands that's got a great following that could help fill up the town during July 4th as well.
So right now, all you're asking for is for us to reserve the band shell from 2 p.m. on July 3rd and complete at 11:59 p.m. on July 4th.
Correct. Now, and again,
That's
so I
just
can
just
get
for use of the
money out.
bands.
Just for the band, so I can get their contracts out.
Then I'll make a motion that we reserve the band shell for the Freedom Fest event for July 3rd and 4th, beginning 2 p.m. on the 3rd, ending at 11:59 on the 4th, for band usage only.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Palmer. Are there any other comments? I'll specify the year, 2020. All right, roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yeah.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed.
Art, we appreciate your leadership in providing events like this in town.
All right, we're now into our second public comment period. A card does not need to be filled out. Anyone may speak. There's still a 4-minute time limit. And when you come up to the podium, please introduce yourself. Does anybody want to speak?
I wanted to bring up to the board that our past board members from years ago, we had quite a bit of issues and talk about and things like that. When we voted this board in, I think talking with several community leaders and everything, we find that we believe we have the right board members in place to help us move this township forward. There's going to be times when we're going to disagree. I mean, from my perspective, from the community perspective, we're going to disagree. but we still like our board. All right, no matter what happens, no matter what is said, and sometimes we just got to take our input or our disagreements and set them aside and talk about them and communicate and bring that information to the community so that we can all come together and talk about it. One of the best examples I'm going to give you is from last week, the vote that occurred. I'm hearing rumors only 100 people showed up. You know, everyone that I talk to, or they come up to me and they mention to me that where was the communication that occurred for the millages that were put up there for vote. You know, I didn't see them. Most of my neighbors never saw them. People downtown knew about it because the signs were out. I drove by and saw the sign out, and I was like, vote here. So I had to pull in and find out what was going on, go get my wallet and come back and vote and call my wife and let everybody at the cruise com know that, hey, it's a vote day today, to get them out. So I'm an IT guy, and I look at the internet as a perfect way for communication. And I would like to see this board really take in consideration of looking at using social media as a way to communicate to your constituents. Your constituents voted you here. We want you here. You know, we want to grow with you. We want to see what's available. But if we're getting kind of like not all the information, and then we're going to struggle. We're going to be coming to you. We're going to have petitions. We're going to say, put out things on Facebook and try to get an understanding of where things are going. And as someone who just finished, now this took us 8 months, our PCIDSS certification. Not compliance, but certification at Service Level 1 out of CruiseCom here, that puts us on a very, very high level of call center activities. I need you guys. I need to be able to come to you and be able to talk to you. And you know, I'm not the best communicator. I don't know your government. I don't know how government works, but I damn well know that I can read about it and get caught up on it and put myself in a situation where I can come to the board and be able to talk intelligently. And that's what I've been trying to do with the water crisis that we're having. You know, I would love to see our water crisis get a resolution. I would love to see it be on a millage where we can actually have a 20-year bond or something available to us to fix the water and sewer problems that we're having. And, you know, I'm personally living on Oak Street at the very end, at the dam where all these PFAS contaminants are just flowing down through there. And you've done a great job getting Van Etten Street fixed. I think that's fabulous to hear. People on Oak Street are very frustrated. We're in the orange when it comes to looking at the PFAS contamination on our street. You know, and we're really struggling down there to understand, how do we get your attention more? How do we put other options out there without going to special assessment and paying $10,000 over 3 years? You know, they're not wanting that. We're looking for solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Greg Cole, 4507 Van Etten Dam Road. I agree with Art. I like the board we have. I hope we can keep it in place, especially with the water crisis. Any of you leave the board, it's going to hurt the water situation. There's a lot of things that's involved with the PFAS contamination, trying to fight the Air Force. And if our board doesn't stay together to go against that fight, it's going to hurt even more. For example, Aaron's got a wealth of information, contacts. Dave Schaefer does too. Joel Nordine, Tim Cummings, your representatives to the RAB board. If we can work together, like Art said, you know, Arnie LaRich, we got the Now group. You know, if we can keep that together, and I think we stand a better chance, because we know we have more knowledge than a lot of entities throughout the state when it comes to the PFAS contamination. And it's right here. because we were the first ones involved with it. We had to learn it on our own, and we've even educated our representatives, some of our congressmen, who didn't know much about PFAS. So I know you don't get paid much, and I wish I could say something about raising your rates to get paid. But if you can just put aside that and see how important it is to keep you guys together. And anyway, I wanted to say that. And then one more quick thing about the fireworks and the Freedom Festival. I had heard from some of my renters that went into town to view the fireworks and talking about the sparklers that John brought up, that a lot of the sparklers, the wires were getting buried in the sand at the beach by the kids. So I just wanted you to know that. I don't know if there's anything that could be done about that, but that was brought to my attention, and I wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, board comments. Does anybody have anything?
I do. First, I appreciate the encouragement. I really do, and the respectful way that you guys shared it. I very much appreciate it. And to further that, and that goes for the first public comments as well. And I hope that that continues with the discussion surrounding specifically Fertile Field, but in all aspects that we have. From my perspective, nothing's finalized. It's all preliminary. It's an idea that we're trying to figure out, is it a good one? And so, there's a process to that. There's due diligence. There's, fact-finding. There's input from the community. So I just hope that all trends in a positive direction, respectful. Everyone has a good conversation, and we end up with a good result, whatever that is. Second thing I had was for the election, 489 is a count for turnout. Now, some of that's absentee ballot, some of that's in-person voting, but the number is 489. That's a low turnout. It's a small election, just the two issues with the township, but that's low probably even for that, for considering it's a small election. I had heard similar concerns or feedback about the notice. So what I know is we spoke about it, public at board meetings. It went out in the newsletter, and the legal notices made it into the paper. I'm not saying that we couldn't do better in communicating. There's always room for improvement, and take that under consideration in the future, because I heard similar feedback throughout the day. And my only other comment that I had written down was regarding social media and communication with the public. A lot of the work that we're undertaking starting tomorrow with the branding, there's going to be a community communication plan put in place here eventually, or worked on. All those things would be benefited by input from the community about how we can communicate well. So some of the stuff we talked about just earlier today in a meeting was communicating through the internet. How can we do that the best to come out with good results for Fertile Field type situations, elections, everything in general. So those are my thoughts or comments.
Anybody else?
Just a comment to Don. I'm still trying to locate that map from Beckett and Rader for you. I've been able to locate the ones for Ratliff Park, but the Beach Park and the one for Fertile Field, I can't seem to get my hands on it.
Remember when I walked in there through
Yeah.
the lobby, I seen it sitting on that easel.
Also, the cost that we paid Beckett and Rader was over $30,000
To do that?
to do that. Just so
Not
you know.
just that.
Well,
The three.
there was not just Fertile Fields, 4 parks overall.
Well,
There was a
no matter
grant
what,
application
there's
as well.
still a cost to it. It wasn't cheap,
But that's just what we've paid them.
but it's just something that I think it's time that
We got,
people
Yep.
speak on this one.
you have more?
Nope, that was it. And I'll get you the drawing from an email or something. Okay.
I had a couple of things. Question on the road millage. If we were to put that on the November ballot for maybe a lesser amount, do we have time to do that?
The deadline is tomorrow.
Oh, then the answer, I guess, is no.
That would be no.
Why is that no?
Well, I mean, if you can,
We're still in session. I mean,
if that can be put together, my suggestion would be a lesser amount. I think what we went for maybe was pushing the envelope a little at 1.9 mils.
1.75.
Okay, 1.75. I think, and with the fire truck being 0.9, maybe if we were to go for the 0.9 for the roads. I don't know if it would be worth attempting since it was turned down, or if.
The amount was set according to how much road we can get done over the long term.
Over the 6 years.
If we lower that amount, then that means that's much less that we can get done, and people are going to wonder why they voted for a millage if hardly any road is getting done. That millage amount at 1.75 only gets a few miles done each year.
Yeah.
Because you still have to pull money also out for dust control and other road improvements. So 1.75, actually, I don't think is enough to really take care of what we need to take care of. But it's what we kind of found is the balance to not have a high millage, but still get enough done that we can kind of keep somewhat of a pace with the degradation of the roads. So if we lower it, we're still going to be in a situation where we're going to have to do special assessments and all this, and then people are going to say, why am I doing a special assessment if I'm already paying for a millage?
Right.
And I just want to kind of echo what Supervisor Weed is saying here. The 1.75, we went over various options with the Road and Sidewalk Committee. Now, even if you dedicated that entirety and you didn't pull out money for dust control and you didn't pull out money for sidewalk maintenance, all right, and just that full amount, increase that by 30%. And that would be the road commission contribution towards the road projects. All right, that unfortunately we have never had a road millage. We've never had funding to take care of these roads. All right, so a lot of these roads were last seal coated in the 70s and 80s. And the pace at which they're degrading, the amount of money it's going to require to be able to keep pace with how far behind we are, it's going to be tough. And when we talk to residents, when we have a road and sidewalk committee meeting, we don't just have one or two show up. There's a lot of residents that show to road and sidewalk committee meetings. And it is an educational experience that the township does not get any funding associated with roads and dedicated to roads. We are simply moving money from the general fund into road improvements, and that is how we fund roads. But we don't get a piece of the gas tax. We don't get a piece of registration fees like cities. And so that puts it onto the road commission and unfortunately the residents through special assessment to be able to address these road issues. And so we had at least 4 different community members request that they be prioritized based on the last road and sidewalk committee meeting. All 4 of those requests were tabled until we could see the results of the millage. Obviously, that was going to be a completely different path if we were to establish the road millage versus continuing down the path of special assessment. Obviously, those that requested prioritization of their roads were hoping for the millage. That puts us in the same situation. We're only one of 4 communities in the county, being Oscoda, Osabo, Reno, and Sherman are the only communities in Iosco County that do not have a road millage. However, Oscoda Township has the most road miles out of any community in the county. And so, yes, the Road and Sidewalk Committee will be meeting in 2 weeks, and we need to formulate a strategy as far as how to educate the community and how to be able to respond to the most recent ballot proposal.
Well, I guess my point was to maybe to give some thought as to whether or not to put it on the November ballot, where, like Mr. Cruz pointed out, a lot of people didn't know that it was election day. I think everybody's going to know there's an election day in November, so I think we'll have more than 489 people turn up. Maybe with a better turnout, we would have a better result on the millage. I don't know. That's a roll of the dice to do that.
I agree with that. I'm good with putting it on a November ballot, but I'm not in favor of lowering it because that's going to be more of a detriment than just not having a millage at all.
Well, then I think maybe just trying the 1.9 again in November, and if that fails again, then I guess the township's spoken. I think that's a poor showing of only 489 residents out of 7,000 here that to determine whether or not we're going to be able to put money into the roads. I think it's worth another effort. If we have to do it by tomorrow, if you think that can be done, then I would suggest that we try and do that.
So that the board has all the information it needs to make the decision. There isn't going to be a November election, regardless of what we decide tonight. The schools are going to be going for they have a ballot proposal. So
there would be no cost to the township to put that on?
correct. Where this time we went on a limb, said we're going to have an August election. We bore the cost of it. It would not be that case in November. Then we'll get reimbursed for.
Just to clarify on that point, that would not have been the case except the school decided to not put it on the August election. That's the reason why we bore the cost. I don't want people to think we put out money just to put these on there, but that's what it ended up being out of circumstance.
Sure, that's where we find ourselves currently.
Well, then that's even better then.
I'll also go on to say I would not want to put it back on the ballot, only from the fact I didn't want that issue in the first place. I voted against the road millage on principle. I would encourage everyone who voted yes on that millage and didn't see it come to fruition, contact the road commission and more importantly, contact the state of Michigan. I believe there's a fundamental problem with the way that our funding works for roads in the state. This would be a Band-Aid. This would be letting a bad system off the hook. It might be the best, quickest way to fix our problem. I recognize that. Idealistically, I don't agree with it. So for that reason, I would vote no tonight on re-putting it in November.
As a member of the Road and Sidewalk Committee, since it was created 17 years ago, I think that doing this again and not changing our method of information, as Art has mentioned and John, is a waste of time. I mean, people need to know what this will provide, what it will eliminate, like special assessments for roads, no more, that would go away. People didn't know that. They just didn't realize that. Like when your Oak Street was done here a few years ago, you guys had to pay for that special assessment. And but people's roads, we were running into a little problem because if it passed, people would say, well, I expect to see construction trucks out there next summer. And that isn't going to happen. As Aaron has said more than once, we have to get together as a committee and decide which roads are the worst. And there's got to be a pecking order. To John's comment about vote no and go after the county road commission and the state, that reminds me, I wasn't sitting on this board, but my information is in the 1990s, there was a battle like this between Oscoda Township and the county road commission, who was in charge of paving roads. And so nothing got done for like 10 years. And as was mentioned here, we have more miles of road than any township. Of the 11 townships in this county, we have by far the most miles of roads. And So we've got that problem, more roads to take care of, and then we have this decade-long where not one road was paved in the 90s, just because of this battle, not because of apathy or nobody cared. It was just it's your business to do this. No, it's yours, and a finger pointing, and nothing got done. So that set us back quite a bit.
To clarify my comment before I get quoted, how I don't want to, and I may not be able to avoid that. My view would be, my contention is more with the state than the road commission. I mean, the road commission is involved by virtue of their nature. I would hope to have the road commission as more of a partner in
Not the
contending
enemy.
with the state, yes. But I believe there's a problem with the system as a whole. My grudge lies more with the state than the road commission, but.
I want to back you up and tell you that, yes, I agree. The state's way of funding roads is horrible. But I did spend several years thinking that the county and the road commission could actually improve, and that's proved to be impossible, just like it was in the 90s, and since then. So I think that by not having a millage, our roads are going to degrade, the system's not going to get any better, and it's going to become more of a problem as more of our roads get turned to gravel. But there's always that if the millage is enacted and later the state comes up with a better system or more funds or whatever, we can always eliminate the millage. It doesn't have to be permanent.
And I think the one fact that's clear is that the roads won't get better on their own over time. They just won't. We can hope that the state will make some changes, but if we want to take care of our township, I think the way to do it is with a millage. Now, if the residents decide they don't want to spend that extra millage to take care of the roads, then they've spoken. But I don't think 489 votes is descriptive of what the residents of the township might want. So I would like to see it put on the ballot in November.
We're closed on public comment right now, sorry. Does the board want to make that decision tonight?
Well, if it has to be in by tomorrow, I think that's kind of required.
Can we add it to the agenda after we've already said it?
The board feels they want to act on a motion tonight, we can do that.
Well, I'll make a motion that we put the same millage on the ballot for November, the 1.75 mils for the road improvements.
I'll support that. Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Weed. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just repeat that if we do this again, and don't change the attack plan, it's a wasted effort, really. Like the newsletter that went out with the summer taxes. There were two brief mentions of, it was on there, but it was the legalese. You know, when you go vote on that, you read lawyer talk on what this proposal, millage proposal is about. You know, what is this? And you try to understand it. That's what you were given in the community newsletter for summer taxes. We can do better than that. You know, and
Where's the floor? I'm sorry, floor's closed on public comment. Mr. Cruz? Mr. Cruz, floor's closed.
I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I mentioned on more than one occasion, we need to put things in the paper, the newspaper. We need to tell them what, you know, the road millage would be. There was a little confusion about the fire millage, but it passed also. But none of that was done. And unless we're willing to really change and take a whole different tack,
I think that there is legal issues with certain things that we have to follow, and I know that all the legal notices were presented for the millages that we can do.
well, there's verbiage that we can use. See, we're walking a tightrope here. We cannot say, go vote for the road millage.
We're taking that out in the paper and
yeah.
say, yeah. don't
But you
forget
can
to vote.
put something in the paper that just says, this is what it will do, and, or maybe in what it won't do, or just let people know what's going on. And talk about that this will cover better dust control, sidewalks. I don't think that's illegal to tell people what, you know, but you can't get too political about it and say, hey, you got to vote for this. This is great. You know, it can't be that obvious. So, especially if we're like buying advertising space in the paper, spending public money to tell people to do something that maybe a sizable portion of the electorate doesn't like, and we're using their money to say the opposite. So it's tricky.
I would just like to see a better representation of voters on the issue. 489 is not representative of the township, and I think in November election you have a better turnout.
I will share from memory, qualify with that, because I compared the turnout from this most recent election in August to what I had under my experience was the first election under my term as clerk was I believe a November election for the ISD, or the IRESA, I should say. And there was about 800 people that turned out for that. So one issue, November election on an off year was 800. So just so that we're gauging where we, and that's where I say.
Yeah, but this is not an off year. This will be a presidential election.
Well,
No,
this will be.
this one's off here.
Yeah, this will be
It's
20.
still off here.
Yeah.
2020 is
Oh,
president.
2020, that's right.
Yeah. So judging from the past, 800 may be a target. We could exceed that. We could,
Well, still, that's nearly double.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I use, for comparison for this one. That's the closest comparable election that I have in my experience to compare to. So just so the board knows.
Well, two things I would say about that is that ISD proposal was a repeat thing. It was on the ballot more than just that one initial time, probably before your time as clerk. And secondly, they really worked for that. I can remember the ISD IRESA superintendent appearing before us, televised meeting to promote it, but he wasn't a member of this board, so he could get a little more pointed than we can, so.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
This is to run this again?
This is to have the millage on for the November ballot
at 1.75.
at 1.75.
Yeah, but we gotta
Is
do
that-
more things, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Nordine, no. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, so we're still in board comment here. Does anybody have anything else?
One other thing. Concerning the bike path, we've got clearance that there are no wetland issues, and we also had a relative clearance on the endangered species. So you'll be happy to know that the only concern is with the Kirtland warbler. There is a small area on the east end of the bike path, which would be near the school, that does have a stand of jackpines. It's not as large as what normally warblers like. Usually have to be 80 acres or more. This is a small stand. The only restriction will be if we have to cut trees, we'd have to do it between May and July 31st. The other thing is there's no concern with long-eared bats in that area, and there is no concern, and my wife was here, happy to hear that there is no concern with Mississauga rattlesnakes within 1.5 miles of that trail. So can rest easy on those things. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so it was brought up about the residents on Oak Street fighting for attention regarding the water main project. And there hasn't been a lack of attention on that project. We have been applying for the funds so that we can complete that project. Hopefully in a few months we'll know what the state is going to give us for funds, if they're going to give us anything, because that is the next one that's on the list to be taken care of. That's been the plan for a long time. That's been expressed several times over. So I just want to make sure that that was clear there, that we're not neglecting any area that's within the contamination or area of concern. But if the people want to have a millage, if they want to have the township pull out a loan and have the general taxpayer bear the burden of the cost of this project, then they can express that opinion, and whatever this board decides for that. Ultimately, it should be the Air Force paying for it. It shouldn't be on our backs. But it's whatever people decide when these things come up. Regarding communication, communication for the township across the internet, I brought that up several years ago. It needs improvement. We've tried to come up with different plans for it. Other things have come up and delayed our ability to do things better, such as our website and communication on social media. But if there's any board members who have suggestions on improving that communications, then it would be great if a proposal was created or some sort of plan was created by any of the board members so that a plan can be implemented to make that improvement. What it seems to have been is that we need to improve communication, and then somehow magically these things are going to happen, and that's not the case. It is up to the 7 of us to develop plans to have these things happen. We just can't blurt out something and then hope that our superintendent will just take care of whatever's blurted out there. He needs a direction from the board as to what we expect. He already has a huge workload to take care of. Some of us need to come up with solutions. That's what we're elected for, is to come up with solutions. That being said, we have communicated quite a bit regarding these things. We've talked about the road millage for over a year. You've written about it in the newspaper, haven't you? Yep, several times in the newspaper about the road millage. Meeting packets are posted on our website, right? You're putting the minutes on the website? People can go to the Oscoda website and pull those meeting packets and see the items that were in those meetings, see the numbers that we discussed, see the conclusions that we came up with, why we came up with those conclusions. It's not that we're not informing. Maybe there's some things we can improve on informing, but there is also the aspect that the general public does also have a responsibility on themselves to also stay informed. People have said, well, I don't subscribe to the newspaper. Okay. That's not our fault. We put it out there. Our reporter has put it out there. It is the responsibility of the people to say, if I'm going to stay informed, these are the outlets that I need to engage with in order to gain that information. And if you say, I don't want to subscribe to the newspaper, but that's where the information is, then, I don't know, read the newspaper or something. I don't know how to put this. The same thing regarding the road plan, how we were going to take care of the roads. We talked about the schedule of roads being taken care of under the Pacer scale, because it's already rated. What are the worst roads and what are the best roads? And we can work from the bottom of the list and go right on up. We can run the plan just like they do in Plainfield Township. They have an excellent road plan, including dust control. Excellent dust control that helps the gravel roads stay better longer. If we don't have a road millage, then I don't want any of our general fund put into roads, because we're pulling money out of the general fund for something that we don't own and that we're not responsible for maintaining. The county road commission is. You elected county commissioners to enforce the road commission. So we don't own the roads, but yet the people expect us to put money into it when they say, oh, I pay taxes. Your property taxes don't go to roads. Gas tax does. So determine, do you want the $80,000 to $140,000 a year pulled out of the general fund to go into roads for a system that, like you had mentioned, is horrible from the state, I would rather see that money put into things that our township government is required to take care of, not the things that another agency is required to take care of. So the people decide. You want a road millage? We can start working on getting some road improvements. You don't want a road millage? Go to the road commission in the state and talk with them about it, because roads aren't us. Those are my opinions, not the opinions of the board. My independently elected position here I'm talking about. The same thing with the municipal building that's being considered to be constructed. We have talked about this for over 6 months. You've written about it in the newspaper, haven't you? It's been put out there multiple times. It's in the board packets. We have engagement meetings that we've had that he has poked and prodded to get people to go to. And only 40 people show up out of a community of 7,000. There's only so much that we can do as a township government to motivate the community. Otherwise, we're going to spend a lot of time trying to motivate people and not actually getting work done. So that's where the community needs to be engaged. They need to be involved in the process. It's not going to come in by osmosis. In order for us to run our government the way the community wants it run, they've got to be engaged. So please participate. Please keep up with the news. Please read the meeting packets. Nothing's being hidden here. We want people to know. But you can't sit there and look at a post on social media and say, oh my God, this is an ambush, when we've been talking about it for a year. So.
It's clicking now, so.
No public comment right now.
All right.
This time.
So anyways, I appreciate you guys coming out and expressing your views. Just wish it was 6 months ago or a year ago. But now is better than never.
Yep.
All right, anybody got anything else?
I'd just like to make one comment about the roads. It's been a big issue here tonight. In Oscoda County, Oscoda Township owns 66% of the roads compared to the rest of the county. So we really need some road improvements. Got a lot of miles out there that are rough and falling apart. So.
Anybody else? We're not in public comment, though. All right, if there's nothing else, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thanks for coming out.